today is clinical research, and we're going to look at the challenges and scope of the same. So I hope all of you are a little bit oriented towards what is clinical research or something, because we are, as it is, we are presented with a healthcare challenge in the community now, and we hear and see a lot of newspaper articles mentioning about clinical trials of vaccines going on, different phases of clinical trials. As such, these are informative, but at the same time, they can be confusing for the uninitiated. So I think this is the best platform to get initiated towards clinical research today. So let's first understand what exactly is clinical research. So clinical research, as the name suggests, it is an essential branch of research, I should say biomedical research, which deals with investigation of the clinical effects of a new drug, device, or diagnostic for therapeutic intervention in human subjects. Mind you, the most important catchwords here are clinical effects in human subjects. So, as you can see in this graphic here, I have shown a top-down approach towards the kind of a rough estimate of the timeline of the drug development process. And as you can see, beginning from the drug discovery research, which is usually 2 to 3 years, and then cell line or animal studies, which is another 1 or 2 or 3 years maximum. Then comes the longest and the most cumbersome part, that is the clinical trials or the clinical research phase, which usually takes 5 to 10 years if you are going through all the phases. Well, there can be exceptions. We can talk about those in the further slides. And then comes the registration process, which is another 6 months, and then finally you see the drug in the market, which is also faced with competition from other similar or devices or approaches thereof. So as you can see that the entire timeline of a drug development is itself like 10 to 15 years. And by the time the drug is coming out to the market, there's already a lot of need that has been created for the drug. Plus, there are also other drugs, other molecules, which are also in their respective research phases, and they are quickly catching up. So let's just go to the next slide, and I will give you a short introduction of how the pharmaceutical enterprise works. So if you were to begin with this whole spiral that begins at the discovery of a molecule followed by the preclinical studies. By preclinical, we mean the stage of research where the drug or the new molecule is going to be tested in animals, small animals as well as big animals. Small animals, usually animal studies start with small animals like rat, mice, or guinea pig. And eventually, they can also further upon into primate species like monkeys, macaws, etc. Sometimes, mind you, although these all molecules, all drugs are aimed at therapeutic intervention for human life, for diseases in humans, still they do have to go through studies in animals. After being tested in animals, then comes the clinical stage where we are going to be talking about majorly today, and that's the testing and the investigation of the drugs effects as well as safety that is tested and recorded and duly approved by the regulatory bodies in every geography. There are different regulatory bodies. So after the clinical research is getting completed, then comes the chemistry, manufacturing, and control segment of the work. That is, the manufacturing facilities and how the drug or the molecule is going to be upscaled and manufactured. And then another important aspect, that is the labeling, as in what are you going to label your drug as, or how you are going to sell the formulation, like what is the label. By labeling, we mean it is going to include a lot of information like directions of to use, or sometimes you may have seen labels of drugs, like on cough syrup bottles, like what is the dosage that is to be given, or the age group, or if young children are taking that cough syrup, how much dose is to be given, what is the storage temperature, how it is supposed to be stored. And also sometimes there are mentions of contra indications. By contraindications, we mean those conditions in which the drug should not be used. For example, in cases of allergies or in cases of some strong formulations. Then comes the regulatory aspect, the very important part. The entire premise of clinical research relies upon the regulatory aspect. So by regulatory aspect, we mean that in every geography, let's say India, so tomorrow if somebody wants to start a company and they have a drug of their own and they want to start selling, can they sell it? No, they can't. There is government. And how does the government get into action in this form is through the regulatory bodies. So in India, the regulatory body is the CDSCO. We will see further how it works. Or more popularly, you may have heard of FDA, that is Food and Drugs Administration, which works in the USA. So although the SCO works in parallelly for as the regulatory body in the Indian region, so the rules and regulations are slightly different. And another European counterpart of this regulatory body is EMA, or the European Medical Agency. Fine. So all the clinical research or whatever experiments or whatever investigational results you're going to get, those are submitted to the regulatory body, and the regulatory body is very keenly supervising everything and making sure that the trials are being done ethically. There is no coverage of data. There is no misrepresentation of the results, and if found suitable, then the regulatory body gives its approval for the drug to enter the market so that it can start selling in the market and patients can go and buy it and benefit it from them. Then finally, after the approval comes the large scale manufacturing facility, where we have these big companies which manufacture. There are companies like pharma companies which have drugs in their pipeline, but they do not necessarily do all the manufacturing in every region, for example. So for example, if there was a pharma giant like Merck or Bristol Myers Squibb, they have their facility in the USA. They have a drug which is already approved, but they need large scale production or manufacturing of it, which is not feasible probably there. So what they do is they can outsource only the manufacturing to another country, let's say China or India. But if that drug is not approved in that region, that drug cannot sell in that region, although it can be manufactured and transported back to the original pharma giant. And then comes the sales and marketing part of it, which you may have seen in the hospitals or in the pharmacists. You see medical sales representatives, they're trying to sell and market their drugs. And finally, the role of the regulatory body does not finish here. It's not like you have got a drug approved, you start selling it. That's it. That's about your responsibility as a pharma company. No, your responsibility continues, that even after marketing, there continues a safety and surveillance check. Like, for example, you may have seen that certain drugs, after selling for a few years in the market, they eventually get banned because certain bad effects or adverse effects were reported. Those were long-term effects which could not have been tested during the clinical phase. But even if in the post-marketing surveillance step, the drugs are found to be, unsafe, then even then they can, they can be a ban on their sale and manufacturing, and they can be rejected. Their approval can be revoked. So on the basis of this entire pharmaceutical enterprise that I've given you an overview, let's quickly see now exactly what is a clinical trial. So a clinical trial is a systematic observational and or interventional investigation performed in human subjects. Mind you, human people are involved in this, to test new drugs or combinations of drugs, devices, diagnostics, or surgical procedures to test their safety as well as efficacy for therapeutic use in a disease or for improvement of quality of life. So I understand that this is a very big sentence for you to kind of understand. But I have highlighted as few words in the red font here, and those are the main takeaways for the definition of a clinical trial. So please, I will read this definition once again, trying to give you a gist of every word and how it is important. So, systematic study. By systematic, we mean that a clinical trial is not a random study where you pick up 5 people or 50 people or 500 people of diverse origins, or you really do not know much about it, but you start just giving them the drug of your choice from any day, and you do not know what is happening, where it is, what are the progress, and you are really not aware of uh, how it is supposed to result. So a systematic study means that before the beginning of the trial itself, the protocol or the rules or the guidelines for the trial, each and every trial has a different protocol, right? So that protocol is written, finalized, it is approved by the review boards as well as the regulatory bodies. Only then the clinical trial can begin. So it has to be a systematic study. There has to be a proper mention of how many participants are going to be there, what is their age group, what is their gender, what is their medical condition, what is their how they are going to be treated if something wrong happens to them during the trial, or if there is some mishappening, who is going to take the responsibility of that. All those things are well defined in the beginning itself. Then the second and the most important aspect is human subjects are involved in this. So clinical trial is that phase where humans are first introduced into this testing phase. Before this, all the testing was done in either animals or birds, or as deemed necessary in other organisms. But humans are tested for the first time during clinical trial of a drug's development pipeline. Then another thing is to test new drugs. New is a very important thing. Now, if there is a drug which is already approved and it is already there in the market, you're not going to conduct a new trial for that, right? Since it is already tested. But the caveat here is that the same drug, if you can repurpose it for a different medical condition, and there have been no reports or no studies earlier of that drug being tested in another indication, then that will be treated as a new drug for that new indication. And then a clinical trial may be permitted. So a new drug or a combination of drugs, devices, like medical devices like pacemakers, or like catheters, or what should I say, stents. All these are devices, medical devices. Then diagnostics, like you have to test the diagnostic approach for any disease or any kind of medical condition. Even that can be done through a clinical trial. Or a surgical procedure, like there are different ways or different types of procedures for a surgery, like an allograft or an autograft. What is more suitable? If you were to compare that, a clinical trial would be deemed necessary to test their safety as well as efficacy. Now, by safety, we mean that how safe is the drug. By safety, we also mean how are the side effects, or how serious are the side effects, or how many people during the trial are going to face those kind of side effects. Like every participant may not face the same kind of side effects. Or somebody may have a headache with a drug, but another person may have nausea. But that person, how serious is the nausea? Is it going by its own, or is it requiring some kind of another round of medical intervention just to cure the nausea? So those are the safety aspects which are also qualitatively as well as quantitatively assessed in a clinical trial. And efficacy means the medical or the therapeutic efficacy, like how effective the drug is against the medical condition it is intended to use against. For example, if there is a drug that is intended to treat TB, although it is safe, but it is not treating TB, then it is not efficacious. Then it is going to fail the clinical trial. At the same time, there may be a drug which is treating TB, but people are dying of a secondary illness, like maybe people are getting obnoxious kind of migraine because of it. I'm just hypothetically talking, and because of which people start dying. So even in that case, that drug is unsafe and it is rejected. All these things under the premise of therapeutic use, not recreational. Tomorrow, if you wanted to test the efficacy of weed or any kind of, vices like alcohol or anything for recreational use, then that is not a clinical trial and you will not get a permission to do a clinical trial. In a disease, now this is also important. Now just testing, maybe multivitamins on people, which is not giving any certain kind of a health benefit in case of any disease, or it is not improving the quality of life, then it is not necessarily a clinical trial, right? So I hope I have given you an exhaustive definition of clinical trial, and with that in mind, we will quickly shift gears and we will look at the overall drug development process here. So now this is the most important and the crux of the entire clinical research industry and the premise. So I want you to start looking at this arrow, beginning the red arrow, which is showing the discovery phase, and then it is leading into the candidate profiling phase, preclinical trials, then clinical trials. So this arrow, if you would look, on top of this arrow is another bar, which is blue and purple. So this is showing you the broad phases of the drug development process. The first phase is the research process, which includes the discovery phase as well as candidate profiling phase. By candidate profiling, we are looking at drug candidates or the chemical moieties under check. Then comes the early development phase, where we are beginning to do preclinical trials. Mind you, preclinical trials are always animal studies. And after preclinical trial comes the clinical trial phase 1. Fine. Then after phase 1 comes phase 2A, then 2B, 3, and finally phase 4. So as you can, if you would go and look at the bar above this, so after the research and early development phase comes the full development phase. And as you can see, clinical trial phase 1 is somewhere at the intersection of early development and full development. So that means by now the drug is fully developed, it's in the testing stage. And by the time the drug enters the phase 3 stage, we enter the life cycle management phase, where the life cycle of the drug will be managed, whether the drug is going to see the market or not. That is what is tested here. Phase 3 and then finally phase 4. I will give you a thorough, dive into all the different phases, but right now just remember the chronology as well as the order of all these phases. Now, going to the vertical arrows here, which show that the candidate selection point is during the discovery phase. Basically, these vertical arrows, they give you a highlight into what exactly or what is the highlight of that particular phase of the study. So then selected for proof of concept. By proof of concept, we mean that yes, our drug or the molecule of interest, it is effective. It is showing some effect. That's all that is, tested when we talk of proof of concept. Then you can see this yellow long vertical bar, and on bottom of this it is written IND. IND is investigational new drug application. So this is where the documentation and the role of the regulatory body starts. So IND, when you have done enough preclinical studies and you are convinced that your molecule will be of therapeutic benefit, you decide to start clinical trials. So when you decide to go for a clinical trial, you first have to seek permission from the regulatory bodies of your country to begin clinical trials, because without having this IND approved or the permission to conduct a clinical trial, You cannot start the trial legally, and if found doing that, there can be serious consequences. So, after you file for IND and that gets approved, you get the permission to start the clinical trials. Phase 1, you always start with phase 1. There is also phase 0 just before this. We will talk about that also. And then there is the development and there is a decision point. So when you conduct the phase 1, you get a fair idea that whether your drug is going to be, ऐसा नहीं है कि लोग मर जा रहे हैं उससे. Like, people should not be uh, dying just because your drug should be a therapeutic molecule. It should not be a poisonous molecule, or it should not be so bad that it is not showing any effect at all. Yeah. So after the phase 1, you go to phase 2, that is the full development point. Then phase 3, where you're going to check. That's like a checkpoint. Like, if everything has been fine in phase 1 and 2, it does not guarantee that even phase 3 will be successful. So phase 3 is the most important part of the clinical life cycle. And after the phase 3 becomes successful, then the owner of the drug or the sponsor of the trial, they can, file for an NDA or the new drug application. And new drug application is basically it is a permission that is that the sponsor seeks from the regulatory body to approve their drug. Let's see, we have conducted so many preclinical and clinical studies, and we have found that the drug is safe and it is efficacious. You submit all the data to them, and they will analyze and take a decision on that. And if they have approved your drug, good. That means your drug is approved, and you can start selling and earning profit out of that. So that is the NDA. So basically, the whole premise of this clinical research industry is to get an approval for your drug so that you can start selling it. And after the phase 3 comes the phase 4, like I told you, post-marketing surveillance. It is also called as PMS. So that means even after the drug is hitting the market, still the studies continue for several years. And if it is found safe, it's fine. If it is found unsafe, even in phase 4, the drug may be revoked. Fine. So now, the same thing, that the boxes on the bottom of the slide, they also typically tell you the same thing that I've just narrated to you, like the R&D phase and the preclinical phase, clinical 1 and 2 phase, and then clinical 3 and 4 phase. Right. Can you just excuse me for 1 second? My laptop battery is just going.
No problem. We also saw that message, so you can. If you have any questions, please write that down. I can see that there are a few questions here, so we can take them all after this webinar. If you have anything, any other query, please write that down as well. I have also shared the feedback form. I think Dr. Tani has to quickly plug in her laptop, otherwise it's going to die. The battery is very low. And please share your feedbacks also. I can only see Sharmishta and Tamanna has some queries. And in fact, Sharmishta and Tamanna are regular students. So I would like to hear or see if the students who have joined in for our webinar, who are for joining for first time, if they have any queries, please write that down in the chat box. I think Dr. Tani's laptop has switched off, so don't worry, she'll be joining us in a few minutes. If anybody here wants to talk about anything, any other thing, any other course they want to listen to, you can talk now. You have the platform. Anybody who wants to say something? If you have any feedbacks or suggestions about our courses, you can also speak about that as well, not just about clinical research webinar. Anybody?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Who's this?
Mahima.
Mahima. Okay, yeah. Hi,
Ma'am,
Mahima.
yeah, can you brief me like about the project consultancy at Genomics?
Yeah, we can talk about that, Mahima.
Yes, ma'am.
You can
Yes.
always
Actually,
send us an email and send us an email at our web email ID, and then so Dr. Tani is back, so we use this time Tani to discuss something else about from the students. So she is back. We have a few questions also. Would you like to take them, Tani, now or after the presentation? We can't hear you. Your mic is off. You're muted. Yes.
Hi everyone. I'm really
No problem.
sorry for this.
No,
Devices can
no
glitch you
problem. No
sometimes.
problem. We yeah.
But
This
yeah,
yeah.
let's just start taking the questions if you have any.
Yeah, so we have two questions from Sharmishta. So she's asking, ma'am, is
Yeah.
there any way by which we can reduce the time for availing drug in the market? And she said that it means, yeah, if we can reduce the time for availing drug in the market, it means it takes maximum 15 to 20 years for the new drug to come to market. Can this be reduced?
Yes, Mahima. Actually, I will give you some points to note about this. So it is not always possible on your own wish that you can reduce the time frame of the drug hitting the market. But then there are certain developments. Like if your drug is doing really well in the phase 2 trials and the data is very good, that time the drug is often given a special status by the regulatory body, like you can say a breakthrough drug it is given, or it is sometimes called an orphan drug, or if there is a special status that is given on the basis of very good data, then even sometimes phase 3 may not be required. Those are special circumstances. For example, also in other cases when there is a high unmet need in the market. That means if there is a disease in the market, a disease in the population, and there are not enough drugs for that disease. Like there are not enough, effective drugs already available. In those circumstances, the regulatory body may say, okay, since you have already got very good data from phase 2, let's say that you start selling the drug and we'll give you approval, conditional approval, and you continue with your phase 3 side by side, and you submit the phase 3 data also with us as the phase 3 completes, but you can start selling the drug if there is a high unmet need, like for example certain kinds of cancers. So since there is no drug already in that kind of a in that kind of a patient population, then this status can be given and drug can start selling. But if you want that, no, today there is COVID-19 happening and I want to get a drug out in the market as soon as possible, yeah, there can be a special circumstance where phase 3 may be evaded. But even though the drug is hitting the market, you still have to continue with the phase 3 to explore and confirm the safety and efficacy of the drug,
Tani, your screen is
right?
white. Are you sharing your slides or?
Yeah, I'm sharing my slides. Can't you see? Sorry.
No, no, I can't. If anybody else can see that, can you share them again?
Hmm.
And
I,
meanwhile, there
I'll,
is
I'll share again.
yeah, please share that. So there are two students who are asking for some sort of career advice on clinical research. We'll take those questions at the end of the session. So there is another question by Rishikesh. He's asking, how did Russia fast track the vaccine so much? Should it be imported to India? Now we can see your screen also.
Okay. Thank you for this question. It's a very relevant question in today's times. See, I have not looked at the case specifically for the Russia vaccine because not much information has been made available in the open source. But actually, the vaccine development process, uh, it has been kind of expedited because they have, evaded some of the security checks which are meant by the, the like the patient population. See, uh, like for every clinical trial phase, there is a specific number of patients which need to be recruited in order to arrive at a conclusive result. But in the current situation, since there is a race to hit the market soon, as well as there is a big unmet need since there are no other drugs available, effective drugs available. Yeah, there have been made some exceptions have been made to those regulatory rules, and those drugs have been those kind of vaccines, they may be made available. However, the safety and efficacy studies, they are not complete, and they will continue to be done on a conditional basis. This approval has been given. So even though the patients start taking the vaccine, but the phase 3 studies, they will continue, and during the phase 3 or the phase 4 it is found that the vaccine is not efficacious or it is not safe, then the vaccine may be revoked. So this is the premise. And second part of your question, that should it be made available in India? Yes and no, both. Yeah, because I would want my Indian people to be cured. If the vaccine is good, then yes, definitely it should come. But no, I said, because I want to be, as a patient myself, I would want to be doubly sure about the safety of the vaccine before taking it in, right? So those are my logical answers to this, whereas some others may vary in their opinion about the same thing. I hope that answers your question, Rishikesh.
And there is
So
another
should I?
question from Brunda. She's asking, will the CAD method, I think CAD, which CAD she means computational aided drug design method, help us in easy and bring the medicine or drug come to a market early than estimated?
Oh, okay. So, Brinda, your question is valid for the discovery phase of the drug, when the drug has not been discovered yet. So, of course, the CAD methods, that is computational aided drug design methods, they can, very well ease the process. And actually, that is the way nowadays the drug discovery starts. So, obviously, it is going to reduce a few months of research, but then every drug, every molecule in the physical form has to go through all the phases of clinical trial necessarily, right? So if that is all with the questions, I can go to the next slide now.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
So
So
Tamanna
just to
and
give you,
Mahima, yeah, just a second. Tamanna and Mahima, you have questions. We'll take them at the end of the session because the questions are more of career related. So let's take them at the end of the session. So please, Tani, go ahead.
yeah. So I will quickly take you through the different phases of clinical trials, that is phase 0 through 4. Now, phase 0 or the microdosing phase. So this is not a very essential phase. Not every drug has to go through phase 0, but sometimes researchers may feel that this is important, so they will do a phase 0 or a microdosing phase. So what actually happens, in short, I'll tell you, is that the researchers give a very, very small dose, a dose which is much lesser than the therapeutic dose. Like if your drug is effective at 500 mg, they will give you 1/100th of that dose, that is only 5 mg, just to test whether this drug is tolerated by the human body. Like ऐसा तो नहीं है कि कोई severe allergic reactions should not happen or severe adverse effects should not happen. So just to test that, and this is a very short phase. It has a very very few participants, sometimes even 2 to 5 participants are recruited for this, and very short duration, maybe mostly within a month this phase is over, and there is less chances of adverse effects because you're already using it at much lesser dose. You can see that there is a word that has been used, PK parameters or PK information. PK refers to pharmacokinetics. That means what is your body doing to the drug. Like if you're taking the drug today, is it, how the drug is, how is your body reacting to this drug? It is not, overly reactive, or how is the drug removed from your body? Is it removed with the urine, or is it removed through sweat, or what kind of exit mechanism this has, right? There is no mention of safety or efficacy at this stage, right? Now, so this is the first stage of testing in human subjects. This is, coming to phase 1, sorry. Now, so first, phase 1 is the first stage of testing in human subjects. Mind you, it is human subjects which may be healthy. We are not talking about patients yet. because whenever you take a drug, you have to compare what is a drug doing to a patient as compared to what it is doing to a healthy patient, so that you can have a good comparison, right? So you are also recruiting human patients in this, healthy volunteers here, and it is designed to assess the safety, tolerability, PK and PD of the drug. PK is pharmacokinetics and PD is pharmacodynamics, like how the drug is going through the body, what is it doing, which targets or which molecular targets is it binding to. That is the mainstay of this study. So this usually recruits 20 to 25 healthy volunteers, and it's a short phase of 6 to 12 months. Mind you, there is no blinding, or it is open labeled. By blinding or open labeled means that the patient knows what drug he or she is being given, right? Blinding, we will see in the further stages that sometimes patients as well as healthy participants both are recruited in the study, and to remove any kind of psychological biases, you do not tell the patient or the healthy volunteer that who is being given which drug. So that is called as blinding, that the patient does not know. But in this stage, there is no blinding. That means patient or the healthy volunteer in this case knows that what is being given. Then the basic prerequisites of phase 1, that is, you have to show, so that you get permission from the regulatory body to conduct a phase 1, is you need to show a preclinical data, IND application, like I told you, investigational new drug application, then approval by the regulatory authority, protocol has to be approved by the ethics committee, there has to be informed consent, very important, that the patient or the healthy volunteers who you are recruiting, they have to be informed clearly that what drug is being given to them, what are the effects of that drug, how it will, how it can affect their body, or how it can, do anything, what are the risks and benefits. Everything has to be informed in writing, and the patient has to fully understand this. And if the patient agrees, only then they will give the consent. Okay. Now, then there is adherence to the Declaration of Helsinki or the GCP guidelines. So this we can talk later. Now, the aim of the phase 1 trial is to determine the maximum tolerated dose. Like, what is the maximum dose that the body can tolerate without showing adverse reactions? So the objectives basically are tolerability and safety studies, and then pharmacokinetics. And I can't see this. Yeah, and then pharmacodynamic studies. Now, who can participate in this? Healthy volunteers can most commonly, they can participate in a non-therapeutic research. Subjects receive no therapeutic benefit for participation. But then in this case, there are going to be ethical issues, that if there is no therapeutic benefit, then why are you recruiting participants? But then it is a necessary evil. Large numbers of such patients are available, and you can do a rapid recruitment. And this is more or less a homogeneous group of participants. So it's good. Then you have patient volunteers who, for example, there are patients of cancer who cannot afford a particular treatment, but they need treatment. So what you can do, you can introduce them to a new regime, and you can say, okay, we'll give you this drug, you participate in our study. So they have this added benefit कि उनको पैसा, they will not have to spend on the treatment, but they will get treated. So for cytotoxic drugs or AIDS therapy, and patients in advanced stages of disease, whenever preclinical toxicity data indicates potential risks for subjects and ethical concerns preclude use of healthy human subjects. Now, wherever you cannot use human subjects, you will look for patient volunteers. For example, in cancer, AIDS, or psychiatric patients. Then dose range of interest is appropriate to determine in patients than in healthy volunteers. Nowadays, there is a new requirement by the regulatory body, special population healthy volunteers. It is regulatory requirement to include women of childbearing age, children, and elderly population. These are all vulnerable population, but you want to check your drug for its safety on these populations specifically, so that you know that your drug is absolutely safe. The weakest population is there, even they are able to face this drug safely. Now, limitations of phase 1, trial is restricted to homogeneous subjects, and performance is extrapolated to heterogeneous marketplace. Now, quickly going on to phase 2, that is the therapeutic exploratory trial. As you can see, the number of participants is much more in this case. Now you have 20 to 300 subjects. The objective is to confirm the effectiveness, monitor side effects, and further evaluate safety. Fine. Basically, you see, in the phase 2, they start looking at the effectiveness. In the phase 1, they were only looking at the safety majorly. Now, this is the first in patients. Mind you, earlier you had only healthy, you could have healthy volunteers also, but in phase 2, you have to have patients definitely who have the disease that the drug is expected to treat. And the duration is 6 months to several years. Objectives are to treat the efficacy in patients, safety issues, optimum dose finding, dose efficacy relationship, therapeutic dose regimen, duration of therapy, frequency of administration, and therapeutic window. What do you require basically as prerequisite to conduct a phase 2 is review of phase 1 data. Innovators or experts should be there on the team, and prior approval of the IRB. IRB is Institutional Review Board, and DCGI. DCGI is Drugs Controller General of India. Like, this is one person who is given the task of overlooking the entire operations of the clinical research industry. He is the regulatory authority overall. Now, the prior approval of IRB as well as DCGI is mandatory to start phase 2. For new actions of a marketed drug, start with phase 2. Phase 1 exemption can also be obtained in some cases. Now, phase 2 can be of two types, that is phase 2A and 2B. 2A is designed to assess dosing requirements. It is the early phase. It is pilot clinical trials or the beginning clinical trials, then 20 to 200 patients. It is not multi-centric. That means you can do this trial in one particular hospital or one particular city. But when you look at phase 2B, those trials have to be multi-centric. That means you have to conduct the trial in different hospitals or different kind of geographical regions, so that you can make sure that the response to the drug has been recorded from a heterogeneous population. Fine. Now, phase 2A are single blind comparison with a standard drug. Standard drug is the drug of choice which is already available in the market. It is already being used for that particular disease condition. Right? It is approved and it is already selling. That is a standard drug. And you compare your investigational drug with a standard drug in phase 2. In phase 2B, those are pivotal clinical trials. That means if phase 2B data is very good, that means you can seek approval of your drug on the basis of phase 2B. Pivotal means important trial on the basis of which approval may be granted in certain cases. Not always, but in certain cases. This usually has more patients, 50 to 300 patients. It has to be multicentric and it has to be a double blind compared with a placebo or standard drug. Now, a placebo, as maybe most of you would know, but a placebo is a drug or a molecule. Actually, it's not a drug or a molecule. It's a comparator, empty molecule, you can say. Like, sometimes, just to compare, like if you are having a medicine and you have a small child in your house, he also wants a medicine, but you cannot give. So you will give something like that looks like a medicine, like maybe a toffee or something that is coated in the same wrapper, and you give that to the child. So the child gets a psychological feeling that, yeah, I'm also taking the same medicine, but that is an empty molecule which has no effect whatsoever. That's called as a placebo. So the same thing is done with patients also. Then comes the phase 3, or the most important, or the therapeutically confirmatory phase, which is large-scale, multicentric, randomized controlled trials. The target population is several hundreds to 3,000 patients. You can see that the Moderna trial for this one is recruiting 30,000 patients. That's a phase 3 trial. It takes a long time, up to 5 years. Not always 5 years, but up to 5 years, you can say. Now, this is meant to establish the efficacy of the drug against the existing therapy in large number of patients, the method of usage, and to collect safety data, etc. Now, the objectives are to assess the overall and relative therapeutic value of the new drug efficacy, safety, and special properties, to determine optimal dosage schedule for use in general, and the dosage schedule in CTs should be as close as possible to its anticipated clinical use. Okay, CT here refers to clinical trials. Now, the prerequisites or the requisites that you need in order to begin a phase 3 is the efficacy and dose schedule defined from phase 2. Obviously, you need earlier phase data to begin the next phase. No gross ADRs. ADRs refers to adverse drug reactions. Mind you, these are the medical terms which are used in this industry. Very commonly used jargon this is. That's why I put it on the slides for you to know, to get initiated in terms of the the technical terminologies. Now, long-term preclinical safety studies have to be completed beforehand, and chronic toxicity, all the different types of toxicity studies which are standard, like chronic toxicity, reproductive toxicity, carcinogenicity, marketing inputs should be favorable, and IRB and DCGI approval has to be obtained. Like in phase 2, same thing here. Similarly, phase 3 also has phase 3A and 3B, which is 3A is prior to NDA. Now, just before filing the NDA, you have done the phase 3A, and phase 3B is when you have just filed the NDA, and since that is going to take its own time, in the due time you're also continuing with your phase 3 trial, right? That is phase 3A and 3B different, and phase 3A generates data on safety and efficacy, and phase 3B, it may supplement or complete the earlier trials or may be directed to phase 4 trials, right? I think, yeah. So the end of, and when the phase 3 finishes, basically that is the end of the clinical trial activities. Now, after the phase 3, the decision has to be taken whether to, approve this drug or to reject it. That means if it is not showing activity or efficacy by phase 3, that means you have to stop it. You have to reject it. You cannot continue doing it in the name of a clinical trial. You cannot keep doing it in human people. So the sponsor or the expert committee reviews its efficacy, safety, and potential sales profit. So this is a go or no-go decision. Basically, to be or not to be, while a decision is taken at this stage, and all the expert reviews by DCGI's committee and approval and marketing information is shared. NDA, that is new drug application, like I told you, it is a formal proposal for the FDA or DCGI to approve a new drug for sale. Sufficient evidence has to be there for safety and efficacy. Benefits outweigh the risk. That means there are more benefits than risks, and proposed labeling, whatever you are saying, is appropriate. NDA contains all the information gathered during preclinical to phase 3. So the NDA, obviously, it can be thousands of pages long, and it can take 2 to 3 years for FDA to review. Phase 4, which is the final or the last stage, it is the PMS. Like I told you, the post-marketing surveillance. There is no fixed duration or no fixed number of participants that are there in this phase, and these are primarily observational trials where you are going to confirm the efficacy, safety profile, evaluation of overdosage, detect the unknown rare adverse drug reactions or the long-term effects which you could not see during the phase 3 studies. Phase 4 or the reporting of ADR. So unexpected SAE. SAE refers to serious adverse events or very serious side effects. Reporting timelines in clinical trials in India. So there is a particular timeline within which the SAE, like for example, if somebody is dying during a clinical trial, so that has to be reported to the sponsor immediately. So those timelines are given that from the clinical trial site to the sponsor, the information has to go within 24 hours, and similarly from the sponsor to the DCGI within 15 calendar days. It's not like we can suppress the information that, okay, somebody died during our clinical trial, we will not let the DCGI know about it, and they will not come to know. Now, this can be a serious offense, right? An ultimate goal of drug development is drug approval. Now, that brings us to the end of the 4 phases. I will just quickly take you through the challenges and scopes. And so, the new drug development is, as you can see in this slide, it is expensive, time consuming, and cumbersome. So, we have to be very sure of what is being done and what comes out of it. So, 1 out of 10,000 new chemical entities becomes a marketable drug. Now, trial regulations, I've listed out some of the regulatory bodies or the regulatory rules or medical protocols that need to be followed. So, first and most important is the role of DCGI under the CDSCO, which is under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Please bear with me for another 5 minutes. I think we should be done.
Yeah, please take your time. Yeah, don't worry. Take your time.
Yeah. Then there comes the ICMR, which is the Institute for Clinical and Medical Research in India, and the ICMR code includes statement of general and specific principles in research using human subjects in biomedical research. Then there are some international guidelines like ICH, GCP, which is the Good Clinical Practices Guidelines, unified under standard for EU, Japan, and USA to facilitate the mutual acceptance of clinical data by the regulatory authorities in these jurisdictions. Indian GCP guidelines, they're also similar to the ICH GCP, and that's why it is conducive to follow these on a global level. Then, under our own law or the jurisdiction, the Indian Penal Code, there is a Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and Schedule Y that tells the requirement and guidelines on clinical trials for import and manufacture of new drugs in India. So this is one law, this thing that is governing all the clinical research industry, all the drugs and cosmetics that fall under this gamut, that are, I mean, this is the most comprehensive kind of a law, and the Schedule Y under this is the one which dictates all the clinical research developments that happen in the country today. So just to give you a glimpse of who all are the role players or the people involved in any clinical research. So this beginning at the pharmaceutical company or the pharma company which sponsors the trial, then comes the CRO or the contract research organization or the clinical research organization in different places. So these are the implementers of the trial. That means they are the ones who conduct the trial. Drugs, which are the objects of the trial, and patients are the subjects of the trial. Doctors are investigators in the trial. Then clinical research managers who manage the trial and overlook the entire progress and data management. And then DCGI is the regulatory authority of the trial in India. IEC, it monitors the compliance of ethics, like everything is being done ethically. Nobody is being, like any kind of misreporting is not happening. IEC refers to Institutional Ethics Committee. Hospital is the site of the trial. Accredited laboratories, that is, they do the lab investigation of the trial. And then regulatory affairs manager ensures the compliance of regulatory guidelines. Data managers develop statistical models and methodology for clinical studies. Medical writers who develop the study documents, reports, and publications. Overall, the clear delegation of duties to the study team members is essential for the smooth execution of a clinical trial. Now, the most important aspect that I have been wanting to talk about the whole of this thing is the advantage India. That means India is at a certain advantage when it comes to the clinical research industry. And let's look at the reasons what make India, what give India that specific edge. So the investigators in India, mind you, the doctors. So we have a large number of specialists in different therapy segments, like different, you have a neurosurgeon, then you have a cardiac surgeon, then you have a particular onco surgeon, onco gastro surgeon, like you have those different specialities already available. Then medical training is done in the English language, which is a big advantage. Then comes that the treatment protocols are in line with the West. That means that whatever the treatment nowadays, it is not given like in the earlier times there used to be a doctor who would write on a perchi and you will go to the dispensary, get the drug. No, it is now very systematic, and the treatment protocols are very similar to what is given in the USA or the West in general, I would say. Then the patient population is very large, diverse, and therapy naive. By therapy naive means they have not taken, like there is a patient population which is having a disease but they have not taken any therapy earlier. So that means they do not have many resistances already. So this gives an edge to those people to, come and try different drugs on them. Then large patient pool in acute or chronic disease segment, yeah, because majorly we have a poor population who suffer for diseases for a long time. And increasing number of patients in lifestyle disorders segment, for example HIV, oncology, or even diabetes, I would say. There's a big patient pool. Then clinical research infrastructure in the country is very good and it is improving as I speak to you. Now, over 200 medical colleges we have, 22,000 graduates per year, with world-class medical or lab facilities at secondary tertiary care centers and skilled computer savvy biomedical workforce. This is a very big advantage that we have, that we have a biomedical workforce which is equally well skilled and savvy with the computer systems. Right. And then we have the connectivity. We have high quality digital connectivity and excellent air surface transport facilities across the country. So with all these advantages in its kitty, India appears as a favored destination for the big pharma companies to come into India and conduct their clinical trials. Right. So now coming to the career related questions or the scope, the few typical roles or job positions in the CR industry. At the entry level, you can be a CRC, that is clinical research coordinator, business development executive, or a regulatory affairs executive, RAE, or BD is business development executive, or a co-investigator or drug safety associate. At the middle level, you can be a clinical research associate, study coordinator, investigator. And at the senior level, you can be a director of projects or clinical research or a data manager or a director of regulatory affairs in many companies. Now, some of the additional exciting opportunities that I have sifted through the market from my own experience that I have come across, I have listed here. That one very interesting area is the clinical data management. So this is for the timely assessment of the progress and required modifications in trial protocols. Then pharmacovigilance, or in short, people call it PV. So basically, pharmacovigilance is that branch where you're doing software-based studies to, record the safety and adverse event reporting. Then clinical data analytics for, management and, reporting of all the documents, saving away all the documents and analyzing data time to time to assess how the trial is progressing. Do we need to change the trial or something like that? Then comes a domain called as pharma consulting that I myself have a background in, and we understand that clinical research professionals do very well in this domain. That is clinical trial design, market analytics, and forecasting. And finally, there is medical writing where people can do protocol writing or report writing. Now that brings us to the end of this presentation. We are hung on medical protocol. That's the whole premise about. And now I'm happy to take any of the questions if you have. Please go ahead.
So thank you so much, Dr. Tani. It was really a very nice webinar. I'm sure the students, participants have also enjoyed it. You have provided such thorough knowledge on all these aspects, different phases of clinical trials, and in fact, this was a learning for me as well. So let's take some questions from the participants now. So we have a question from Tamanna Das. She's asking that, as you mentioned earlier, general medicines like multivitamins need not to go through such trials. Can you make this matter a bit more clear? So is it like not all medicines that we consume in general don't go all through all those steps of clinical trial?
No. Sorry if anything I said created a confusion. Now, I wanted to make a point that if there is something that is consumed by people, like for example, if tomorrow you start consuming Bonvita, right? Apart from the FSSAI guaranteeing the safety of that Bonvita composition, they will not really require a clinical trial with human subjects to make sure that how it is doing or something, although it is aimed at doing some kind of fitness benefit or something, but then it does not warrant a clinical trial per se. Same thing about multivitamins. If a multivitamin claims that it is going to improve your vitamin B levels in your blood, or if it is going to claim that it is going to improve the iron levels or vitamin D levels, then yes, it will require a clinical trial. But if there are some multivitamins which they start taking over the counter, just there are some multivitamins which say that yeah, they will make you feel good, they will make you feel energetic, they do not have any medical or clinical benefit claims as such. Those do not require clinical trials. But anything else that you are consuming for clinical benefit in case of a disease or any improvement in quality of life, yes, it does warrant a clinical trial. I hope that makes my point clear.
So with this, I also have a question. So what of those medicines which say are boosters? So do they also need clinical trials, or they are just immunity boosters?
Yes. In most cases, yes, they do. If they are claiming that yes, they are going to do a certain benefit to your life, they are going to give you a certain improvement in quality of life, yes, they do need clinical trials. But then those clinical trials are suitably designed to answer the questions pertaining to that particular drug or that particular claim.
And even if,
Right?
as many people in India claim that the drugs have been made using Ayurvedic procedures, those drugs also need clinical trials.
I will tell you about this coronil that
Yeah,
came
yeah.
out from
Actually, I didn't want to name that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not particularly want to name that, but the one reason why, suddenly on the second day of its, launch, the DCGI came up and he said that no, we are not approving of this because it has not gone through any clinical trial. So it cannot claim that it will rid you of coronavirus. Okay, you can consume it as an Ayurvedic preparation. So in India, there is a certain exception for Ayurvedic and Unani prescriptions that people can take. Since there are no clinical trials, therefore you cannot even hold people responsible for their failure. Right? Now, eating tulsi will get rid of fever. Right? For example, somebody may say, if it cures your fever, good. If it does not cure, all right. You cannot claim that somebody told me tulsi will cure fever and it has not cured, so that person should be prosecuted. No, that cannot happen. Yeah, so that is the question. That is my short answer to this question.
Yeah.
Although there can be a very long ensuing debate on this
Exactly,
topic,
I
but
know. Yeah, so let's not get into that now.
yeah,
So let's
yeah.
have another question. We have a question from Vrunda. She's asking, ma'am, just a query: can a drug or medicine backfire in initial phases, like one or two, in a healthy person or healthy volunteer? Will it affect in their health as well?
Yes, that's why we do clinical trials. That's why. I mean, in case a drug is failing, it is showing bad effect. Yes, it can show bad effects, and that's when you want to stop or curb it from affecting more people. That's why in the earlier phases of the clinical trials, you have fewer participants. So whatever uh, you know. uh, such kind of sudden effects or grave effects that are there, they can be watched out for in the earlier stages itself. And if I can talk to you later maybe in detail about this, that if during a clinical trial, if there is a participant and the drug was harmful for that patient, and patient either dies or gets a lifelong disability because of that, all those insurances are taken care of by the sponsor. The sponsor has to reimburse the participant for that kind of disability because of taking that drug, right? So that's also a big premise in the whole this industry. That's why I think that is also one drawback of the Indian population, that it is very easy for the pharma companies to come to India and lure participants in the name of, say, we'll give you 1,000 rupees, you start taking our drug, without knowing the participant being poor and illiterate. They will start taking the drug without knowing how bad it can be, right? To just protect our own people from such kind of cheating, our DCGI has ensued these guidelines that there has to be an informed consent form, and all those GCP guidelines, that is good clinical practices. Those are to ensure the welfare and the beneficence of the patient population, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so next we have a question from Rishikesh, that sometimes on news channels I have read headlines like some vaccine enters phase 2 or 3 of clinical trials. What does 2 or 3 mean? Is it possible to conduct or start phase 3 along with phase 2?
So I'll tell you, that is another part of the whole story. I could have explained you in better detail maybe in another session altogether. So the clinical trial design is a big, it's a big subject or topic in itself. So sometimes, at clinical trial, as you may have seen, that at every phase of clinical trial, you have to submit the data of the previous phase in order to seek approval to start with the next